Okay, so I'm really excited for Remnant 2, and by the end of the day, who isn't, right? Now that we have just a few days left before the game releases, which I'll be playing like a madman non-stop day and night by the way, I think it's the best time to reinstall the not perfect but still great Remnant from the Ashes, Dark Souls with guns. The game known for its hack and slashy, shoot and looty combat, procedurally generated maps, tons of replayability and multiplayer co-op that is done the way it should have been done in every Souls game available.
Okay.
By the time this video comes out, I'll probably be playing Remnant 2 because I got this Ultimate Edition that lets you play the game 3 days early, so you can expect a Remnant 2 worth a buy video too in the nearest future. But today, let's go back to 2019 and check out Remnant from the Ashes again to remember why the game is so damn good, shall we? Let me do this quick YouTube thing before we start. Once I reach 1000 subs, YouTube will let me monetize my content, so if you feel like you want to support me and help me reach that goal, subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. Right, so Remnant from the Ashes came out in 2019 and passed me by completely. I got it as a gift from my friend Ali that I often mention here on this channel in 2021 or something. And oh man, we had a blast playing it. Remnant is an action RPG with Souls-like mechanics like bonfires and enemies respawning when you die, but it truly feels like Dark Souls with guns only if you play on higher difficulties. There are 4 difficulties in total: Normal, Hard, Nightmare and Apocalypse, where the last 2 are meant for geared players that already have a better understanding of the game's mechanics. Normal makes the game feel like a hack and slash shooter really, which is not necessarily a bad thing to be honest. I personally like to go with Hard whenever I start a new game. It gives you a little XP boost and makes non-boss enemies just a wee bit chunkier. It's a pretty cool thing that you can change the difficulty by re-rolling your campaign in the main hub area if you're not having fun, but more on that later. Creating your character in video games is one of the most exciting things in video games, and it usually takes a shit ton of time for me to finalize my beautiful creation. In Remnant it's quite simple and obviously purely cosmetic. Yeah, you can't create dubious freaks like you always do in Elden Ring, you weirdo. A few faces, a few hairstyles, a few voices. By the way, one of the male voices belongs to the amazing Dave Fennoy, the voice of Lee Everett from the Walking Dead series and Jed Masterson from Fallout New Vegas.
Howdy, friend.
The best video game ever created, and if you disagree we're gonna fight. It's a real shame that Jed Masterson dies so quickly. I swear if there's no Dave Fennoy voice option in Remnant 2 I'm gonna riot.
That all you got?
When it comes to difficulty, it only affects the XP gained and enemies' health pool. Nothing else, no exclusive loot, no higher enemy density. Here's how it looks like. On Hard, enemies have 50% extra health and you get 15% extra XP. Whereas on Apocalypse, enemies have extra 175% HP and you get a 50% XP boost. I believe we were playing on Hard, jumping to Nightmare from time to time to get our fragile egos shattered to pieces and then jumping back to Hard. So yeah, I think Hard is the good middle ground for new and returning players. It gives you a decent challenge and lets you moderately enjoy your badassery. In Remnant you can't just change the difficulty on the fly, you have to re-roll your campaign from the main hub area that is called Vault 13 or something. When you re-roll your campaign you lose the progress, as in all the bosses will respawn, the map will be unexplored and any events that occurred undone. However, you keep your character, your gear levels, etc. Pretty much everything about your character remains exactly the same. It's really cool that every time you re-roll everything changes. The map is different, the loot is different, even some bosses are different, so it's worth re-rolling from time to time even if you're happy with the difficulty but want to grind something specific. I also can't wait to see how it will be in Remnant 2, because we're promised a mix of procedurally generated and handcrafted locations where every playthrough can be completely different. I wonder how that will play out. The story in Remnant is pretty trivial. The game takes place in a post-apocalyptic shithole called Earth that has been devastated and overrun by an interdimensional evil called Generation Z. No, the Root. These twats. You are a wandering survivor caught in the middle of the shitstorm, asked to put an end to the Root invasion by traveling to some beacon on some island that is said to be the root of the problem. Yeah, no pun intended. Like I said, it's pretty simple, it's easy to follow, there are voiced dialogues with dialogue options, etc. But if you want a deeper understanding of what the hell's going on in the world, if you want extra lore, it's there for you to find. Extra lore is given through notes, item descriptions, just like in Dark Souls. I wish it worked like that in real life too, because I have no idea what the hell's going on anymore.
What is worth more, art or life?
Now what really makes the game shine is its combat. It's robust, well polished, satisfying. The hitboxes are just so good that it's kinda hard to believe it sometimes. Dodging enemy attacks and then spraying lead at them feels so good. You can have one primary weapon, one sidearm, and a melee weapon. Each of the 3 starting classes have different loadouts, but it doesn't really matter because you can buy all the starting gear pretty much from the get-go. When it comes to weapons, there's a good variety too. You have sniper rifles, assault rifles, repeaters, revolvers, sawed-off shotties, swords, hammers, hatchets, and some weird shit like Curse of the Jungle God or Devastator that look like they shoot dubstep or something. There are also mods, sort of like special abilities that can be installed into almost every weapon. It's kinda similar to Elden Ring's Ashes of War. Mods are acquired primarily via crafting. Just look for this passive-aggressive chick McCabe and you're golden.
Let's see what we're dealing with here.
Mods affect your gameplay big time. For example, you can have an area of effect healing mod on your handgun and a hotshot mod that imbues your ammunition with flame for a period of time on your assault rifle. Or you can have a mod that lets you have a weird looking dog as a companion, and yes, you can pet the dog. It's worth experimenting with mods, especially if you play as a team. I really like how the mod system is done in Remnant. What also makes a difference is how you build your character. In Remnant, when you level up, you are given a trait point you can invest in one of the traits. Traits are passive abilities that are tied to your character progression. Now, you get new traits by performing certain actions in the world. For example, vaulting over obstacles a certain amount of times gives you the climber trait that increases your vaulting speed by 1% per trait point. Some traits you can only get by defeating certain bosses. For example, footwork trait that increases your movement speed while aiming can only be obtained by defeating Iskall Queen on courses. Speaking of bosses, from the top of my head I can remember a few: the Shroud, Gorefist, and Ixalis. Bosses in Remnant, in my opinion, is the weak link, and not only because it feels like most of them were designed solely for co-op. Most of the bosses have only a few mechanics to worry about, and what they lack in mechanics, they compensate in a fucking horde of trash mobs you have to deal with while fighting the boss. Like the Shroud, for instance, one of the first bosses you encounter. It's not a difficult fight all in all, but I died to an arrow in the back more times than I want to admit because I was busy dealing with or avoiding trash mobs. Also, I will not forget Ixalis fight anytime soon. You have to perfectly time every single move, and if you're playing in co-op, your mates have to do the same. One little mistake and the run turns to shite. Good times. Gameplay loop in Remnant is pretty straightforward. You teleport out of Vault 13 into a location you need to do your objective at, explore a procedurally generated map, loot stuff, kill stuff, do the objective, come back to Vault 13, sell stuff, upgrade stuff, talk to people, and go on again. There are a few modes for you too. You have your regular campaign where you progress the story, and you have adventure mode. Adventure mode basically generates a portion of the world with a dungeon boss and a world boss in it. Let's say you want to fight a specific boss one more time. You can just roll an adventure and go for it instead of re-rolling the whole campaign. There's also survival, a roguelike mode where players start off in the labyrinth only with a repeater pistol and some scrap they can use to buy equipment. After players are ready, they teleport to a random location where they must find and defeat the boss to come back to the labyrinth and spend collected scrap. There are 2 DLCs for Remnant: Swamps of Courses that let you access survival mode mentioned above and gives you a few new skins, dungeons, enemies and bosses. And the second one, Subject 2923, adds a whole new campaign with its own story, new enemies, new location. I liked it quite a bit. It's a good DLC and it's worth checking out once you're done with the base game. And before I draw a conclusion, I'd like to point out the positives and the negatives. I really like how Remnant from the Ashes combat works. It's robust, engaging and satisfying. Hitboxes are amazingly done too, and it's a pure joy to shoot the root in the face, then roly-poly behind their backs to finish them off with a rusty piece of scrap metal or something. I really like how multiplayer co-op works in Remnant. It's seamless. You can play the game from start to finish with your mates, and it can be a really good time. I also like how procedural generation works. Every new run brings new events, new bosses and new loot, but that brings me to the negatives. After a few re-rolls, you kinda start noticing how much content was recycled. Like, it really shows. you start noticing all the reused assets, and it's a little bit of a bum out, but not a big deal to be honest. Also, some bosses, like I said earlier, were designed with co-op in mind and are not as fun when playing solo. I'm not saying they're impossible to beat or anything, but it's just you'll have to spend more time dealing with them alone. To draw a conclusion, I'd like to say that Remnant indeed is more fun than it has any right to be. It's a ridiculously good take on Souls-like formula, and if you like this type of games and haven't tried Remnant yet, go get it. It's worth the money. 40 buckaroos is a hefty price for a 4 years old game, but the game's worth every penny, honestly. Or get it when it's on sale. The price usually goes down to $16. For $16 with the amount of content available, it's basically a steal. I'm super excited for Remnant 2, I can't wait to check it out. Actually, if you're listening to this, I'm probably playing it already. Man, I hope I'm having fun right now. It better be good. Give me a sub if you like my content. You can also now become a patron. All the links are in the description. Thanks for watching, see ya.